Good afternoon. Welcome once again to the Game Line here on Wales Online as the fallout from that England-Wales game continues. Simon Thomas is with me as we look ahead to the Scotland game on the weekend and discuss the big issues of the day. As always, we want to hear from you, so please do get your comments and questions coming in. Simon, let's start with the latest news. We've just been monitoring the Wales press conference that's being held this lunchtime. Not a great deal of news. Jake Ball definitely out, which we knew on the weekend really, but they're pretty tight-lipped about the other injuries we saw in that game, aren't they?
The big issue for me, John, is where my little friend is. Is he under the table with his very tight shirt? It's interesting, isn't it? It was a bit like Casualty Ward 9 or 10, whatever it was, on the weekend. Yeah. There was a lot of people with bumps and bruises, scraping themselves through by the end. So it's quite surprising that that the medical report from Neil Jenkins is so positive, really. I mean, we knew, obviously, negative is that Jake Ball is facing quite a lengthy layoff, nasty shoulder injury. He's picked up surgery required, so he's probably going to be out for, you think the rest of the season, realistically. But apart from that, the only other one who was mentioned was Lee Halfpenny. We know Lee took a nasty gash to the knee, but even they say, although he's sore, he's a tough guy, they say, and they're hoping he's going to be available. And it's a bit surprising. We saw Dylan Lewis coming off. He seemed to have quite a painful ankle injury. Shingler, it was unclear whether it was his ribs or chest.
He seemed a lot of pain at
one point. Yeah. Leon Brown, I think, in the tackle he made on Sinclair, seemed to get, maybe that was a stinger, but you can only go on what they're telling us. And they're clearly wrapping everybody up and hoping to get him back on the pitch. So, there will be some interesting selection decisions to make based on that.
Yeah, indeed. Sore bodies and lots of news lines to come out of that game on the weekend. We touched on some of them yesterday, which was before the big sightings announcement that came yesterday afternoon. 3 England players now facing bans, Tuilagi, Marler and Courtney Lawes. Let's start with the big one then, Marler. Probably no surprise given everything that came out that he is facing a ban and potentially a long one. Yeah,
it's really divided opinion, isn't it? You seem to be the two courts. You get the Bants brigade who sort of, accusing everybody else of being snowflakes and woke. And then you've got other people saying, no, it's completely, the other extreme. You've got some people suggesting it's a sexual assault, I think it's in between the reality he's done something unacceptable. Yeah. Something you don't want to see on the rugby field. And there's a big old sanction for that. If you look at the legislation, you look at the framework, it's an entry point of 12 weeks. So even if
he's not exactly got good character from the past.
Well, you often see in these disciplinary hearings, good conduct, previous conduct taken into account. Well, he's had a few brushes with the beak before. So it's 12 weeks minimum if they find him guilty, and it's hard not to, really, isn't it? And then maybe a few weeks off that, but he's going to have, realistically, you think he's going to have a lengthy ban. And I guess a message does need to be set. There's certain behaviour. I know that I've seen various things like, he lives for the joke, he lives for the laugh, he's the comic. Yeah, it's not really funny. I mean, but again, some people think it is funny. I don't know. It's really sort of exposed differing attitudes to life, and you get this whole thing. It goes on all the time in rugby. Does it?
I'm aware.
Does it? I mean, it certainly doesn't go on all the time in professional rugby.
Yeah.
Because, you'd be caught, because the camera's everywhere.
Yeah, there are these days indeed. And of course, they've obviously picked up Courtney Lawes as well, which went unpunished during the game, although it was noticed and replayed on the TV coverage. Not a surprise again with that, with the Alan Wynne-Jones incident.
I mean, that's an interesting one, that, because I think what people have got to remember is that we see maybe one clip, one angle. The sighting commissioner, the sighting officer who goes through the tape, would have every available angle to him. Now, if you look at the Courtney Lawes one, it's not entirely clear from the most seen footage exactly where the point of contact is. Lawes comes in, his arm is down to his side. You see Alan Wynne go down. Alan Wynne obviously had a couple of minutes treatment.
Yeah.
You really need to see it from the other angle to see the exact nature of the contact. But clearly the sighting officer has decided it was a dangerous tackle. And given that the arm was down by his side, it's pretty much a shoulder charge. So you would think that decision, because essentially what the sighting officer decides is if it's a red card threshold.
Yeah.
If it's a red card offence in his view, then he puts it forward to the disciplinary panel. Because people have obviously pointed to the Hadley Parks incident, where Hadley Parks made a tackle on Manu Tuilagi, and people saying, well, Tuilagi got done. Lawes has got why not park? I mean, all I can say to people is the framework is there. It's very clear in terms of what it says. There's also a lot of misunderstanding. There's some people like look at the framework and the cast and but don't really take it in. It's detailed, but it's detailed for a reason, to make these things clear. Now, Hadley Parks is a different situation because there was a clear attempt at a wrap. So that takes you away from this whole area of it being an always illegal tackle and just pure shoulder charge. But the fact that you wrap doesn't mean that you're free of the danger of a red card. It goes into high tackle territory there, and then you come into lots of other factors like what's the point of contact? Was it head to head, shoulder to head? If yes, then it's a red card unless it's deemed to be low danger, unless there's mitigating factors. It's not a simple thing. There is a whole framework to look through. If you want to, anybody can look at it on the World Rugby site. But ultimately, a lot of this comes down to a judgment call. Yeah. At home, if I hit you now, is it high danger or low danger? It's probably low danger for me, high danger for you. But you know what I mean? Yeah. It's trying to get inside the mind, and you've got to make these judgments, and it's very, very difficult. But ultimately, that's why the citing officer is there. He's an experienced person in that. He looks at all the variables, all the criteria. He looks at the framework, and then he makes his call.
Yeah, indeed. Okay, a couple of questions then along similar themes. David Slade says, England's tackle technique, he says, ITV highlighted 5 dominant tackles at half-time in their coverage. He says 4 were clearly illegal hits. Did England rough Wales up?
They were very physical. It was a very physical game all around. I suppose the whole point is if you're looking for dominant tackles, you're always edging towards the edge, aren't you, really? It's the same, I suppose, as pushing the limits over the ball at the breakdown. You're always looking to get the ultimate legal action while pushing legality to its nth degree, you know. And they went into that. They clearly felt, I would imagine, after last year, that Wales got into them physically, you know, sort of psychologically as well. And they were not going to take a backward step. Now, when you take that attitude in, sometimes you can cross the mark.
Yeah.
Bottom line is they've got 3 people now who one has been sent off, and 2 more who the citing officer thinks should have been sent off. Now, if Marler had gone, because it was very early in the game, that incident, if Marler had gone, 14 men for sort of 70 plus minutes, you've got to think it might well have been a different result. If Lawes had gone, it might well have been a different result. Again, people will say, but Park should have gone as well. So, you know, you go round and round in circles and all these things, but I suppose that's what the system is there for.
Yes.
If things are missed on the day, you pick them up subsequently. Did they rough Wales up? Probably.
Yeah, difficult game to referee, isn't it? Rugby really is lots going on. One person who's not facing sanctions, as far as we know, is Eddie Jones after those post-match comments. Chris here says, is Eddie Jones' a lack of respect for the referee a serious concern within the game? Should he be brought to task? This obviously refers to his comments afterwards. He said Wales were playing with 16 men. Basically said the referee was not far off a disgrace, really.
I mean, there's 2 bits of it. On the tackle itself, he shows that he's not entirely up to speed with the laws.
Yeah.
Hands up, I wasn't. I was not fully aware exactly of the kind of nuance of the criteria, which basically says, I've checked this with World Rugby, and in the context of the Tuilagi hit on George North, if a tackle is never legal, if it's always a shoulder charge, if there is no genuine attempt at a tackle, then you can't consider mitigating factors. That's it. Eddie Jones referenced the fact that George North was falling. Irrelevant. When it's an always illegal tackle, no mitigation. So he was wrong there. So he's called it wrong. It was a red card offence. Under the framework, it's cast iron that it was a red card offence. So, he, you know, on that front, he should apologise to the referee, because the referee got it right. Yeah. Now, he may not like the framework. A lot of people don't like. A lot of the games gone soft brigade don't like it, right? They think, oh, you know, it's a man's game. There's going to be physical contact. That was a flying shoulder charge. Made contact with the head. It's as red as a red thing can be, you know? So he really should apologise to the referee. What took it to another level was the comment that it was 16 against 13. That's insinuating that the ref made a decision to favour one side over the other, and that's well out of order, I think. Yeah,
okay, let's move on to Wales, Scotland then. The team announcement's only 2 days away now, expecting that Thursday morning, Thursday lunchtime. Question you, is it time for big changes, particularly looking ahead to the next World Cup? Lots of older players still in that Wales 15 under Pivac who we wouldn't expect to be around. Do you think it is time, or do you expect to see significant changes? Your Rhys Samets of this world coming in, starting?
Well, it was interesting. I mean, going back to Eddie Jones, one of the things he said in his post-match press conference was this is a hugely seasoned, experienced Welsh team, 850 caps, and when you reach that point, you're going to come at some point to the need to freshen and go through a transition period. So is this the right moment? It's a tricky one because it suddenly starts to get a little bit of heat on Wayne Pivac now if they lose 4 in a row.
It does, yeah.
You know, losing out in Ireland, that happened in the Gatland's era. Losing out in England, that happened in the Gatland's era. Losing at home to France, rare, but France, you know, a renaissance, a resurgence. You can probably cope with all of those things if you're thinking it's a transition period. We haven't lost at home to Scotland since 2002.
Yeah.
If we lose at home to Scotland, then it will get quite painful for Pivac in terms of the public reaction. So I think you would understand from that perspective why he would go with his strongest available team for this game. As Andy Howell said last week, he needs to stop the rot.
He does.
He does. So that would suggest probably not going whole house. You could make sweeping changes and bring a lot of younger players through. You could go Tompkins and Watkin in the centre. You could go Rhys Samets on the wing. I mean, you could go, Leon Brown could come in if you wanted to try something fresh there. You could start with Brian O'Leary. You could do a lot of those things. Yeah. Will Rowlands. I mean, I think he will tinker. I could certainly see Rowlands starting. I mean, we lost Jake Ball now for the rest of the championship for a long spell. Adam Beard seems to have fallen out of favour with the new regime. Isn't clear whether Corey Hill is available again yet. You could certainly see Rowlands coming in because he made an impact when he came on against France. Back row, I think you probably stay as you are. Scrum half is the interesting one.
Yes, it is. Nobody can decide who is Wales' best scrum half.
I said at the start, some people talked about the riches at Wales' disposal at number 9, but sometimes when you've got so much choice is a difficult thing to work out, and it's been clear that Wales have been going through the process of trying to work it out. I think there's now a view that in terms of the most all-round scrum half, the most rounded performer, and also the one that perhaps fits in best with this game plan, where it's all about sort of attacking speed of deed and thought. You need a game controller, almost like a French-style little general there, because there's so much going on with this Welsh style. You need someone who can really read the game, and there's probably an argument that Rhys Webb, especially with his experience, and the way he plays, and his tactical kicking as well.
But again, long-term Thomas Williams has to be the answer long-term, doesn't he?
Well, I don't know. It depends. I mean, Rhys is now 31
now, is he?
So I mean, Rhys would probably look to get through to the World Cup, wouldn't he? I mean, it's 3 years away. Thomas is an interesting one because I watched a lot of him coming through, and natural ability is immense. You saw again, there was one of his basketball moments of the weekend.
Yes,
but the bottom line is now you can point to 3 tries where he was, probably at fault during this championship. Fell off the second tackle on Jordan Lama at an island, dropped the ball out in Ireland, which led to their second try. And then at the weekend, he's in a one-on-one situation with Anthony Watson, and Watson does him. Watson's a fine player, but when it's one-on-one, if you're beaten, you always feel like that shouldn't have happened. So Thomas, he's still young in international terms. This is the thing. Yeah. But clearly, there's things for him to work on. And I just think at the moment, I mean, they seem to. Gareth Davis is jettisoned from the 23 all. You never know. He might start next week now. But I think it probably points to Rhys Webb starting on Saturday.
Yeah, fair enough. Just have a quick couple of questions to finish. Then David Cowan James here says, if Wales were to lose to Scotland on Saturday, that's a good name. Yeah, very good. Well done. If Wales were to lose to Scotland on Saturday, who haven't won in Cardiff for 18 years, do you think Wayne Pivac is the right man for the job? So probably touching on what you were just alluding to, that things are going to get very tricky for him if they do.
Put it this way, he's not going to be sacked, but what it does mean is the pressure mounts.
Yeah, it's a tough summer coming up.
Tough summer. They got Japan and then 2 tests in New Zealand, and then a very tough autumn. They've got New Zealand, Argentina, South Africa, and Fiji. There ain't any easy beats coming up over the next 9 months for him.
No, indeed. Let's finish on a positive note here. Kevin says, just how good is Justin Tipuric? I've seen a couple of people, somebody on Twitter yesterday suggesting he, pound for pound, is the best Welsh player of this generation. Is that going too far, do you think? How good is he?
Pound for pound is an interesting one, because locks are big anyway, aren't they? So I'd probably still stick with I mean, the three that stand out for me, putting Tipuric aside, in the modern generation are Shane Williams, Gethin Jenkins and Alan Wynne-Jones in all very different ways.
Yeah.
Wonderful world-class players. Justin Tipuric's a world-class player. He's obviously had to wait for quite a bit of his career where he hasn't been regular starting.
Yeah.
He's got probably 70-odd caps now, getting towards that mark. But for a lot of the time, he was having to play a waiting game with Sam Warburton, or sometimes playing with him, coming off the bench.
You were always a Warburton man, weren't you?
Massive Warburton fan because of the modern nature of modern-day rugby. Just his ability over the ball, that the breakdown is everything in rugby.
Yeah.
It's in rugby league, the tackle is where the game stops. In rugby union, the tackle is where the game begins, the breakdown. And whoever wins that breakdown dominates and controls the game. And he was one of the best I've ever seen, along with McCaw and David Pocock. Justin Tipuric has other strengths to his game, and I think what he does offer you is an all-round ability. He's more than competent over the breakdown, hardly ever misses a tackle, outstanding in the open play, real pace around the pitch. He is like pretty much a complete rugby player. What I do think, and it's no coincidence to me, and I've said it for some time, he is at his best when he's got Josh Navidi alongside him, because Navidi takes some of the pressure off him having to be constantly the man over the ball at the breakdown, constantly doing the close quarter stuff. Navidi, incredible performance given he'd been out for a couple of months. Him coming in and frees Justin Tipuric to do what Tipuric does best, while also contributing in those contact areas. And that's where I think you really saw Tipuric at his best at the weekend. And I just think he's a great player to watch. And the try he scored, I mean, he produced the finish. He was part of one of the great Six Nations tries, and he is one of the great Welsh players of the professional era.
He was. Okay, let's leave it there. We don't often get to end on a positive note these days, so we'll do that. Thanks, Simon. Thank you all for joining us. Thanks for all your comments and questions. We'll be back again tomorrow lunchtime. We will see you then.